This is Solo in the Shop. On today's episode, I want to talk about some of the old school trades. Let's get right into it. If you're watching this episode on video, you'll see that for the first time ever, I'm recording this solo in my shop. There's tools and projects all around me. It's quite colorful, quite cramped, but this is my solo in the shop experience most days when I'm not recording. The topic today is about old school trades, and this all grew out of an experience that my wife and I had last week getting some chairs reupholstered. And we wanted to update the chairs in our dining room. And the first difficulty was that there was only a handful of upholstery people to choose from. And luckily, Anne's mother had had some experience with a guy in New Hampshire, and we got in touch with him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm still doing it." And we were like, great. That was, we had a good recommendation, and we started the process. We set an appointment to bring one of the chairs to his shop. And when we got on the road, Anne tried to text him and say, "Hey, we'll be there at, 10:45 or whatever." And her phone bounced back saying, "This is not a cell phone," which told us that the company was using a landline. And that just seemed so old-fashioned, old school. But we got there, and his shop was in a garage, much like mine. His was much cleaner. And we go in, we look at the chair, we talk about it, we look at fabrics, we make our selections. And then he says, "Okay, to get started, I just need a $250 deposit." And Anne's like, "Well, what, how can I pay the deposit?" And he says, "Cash or check. I don't take credit cards or Venmo or any of that stuff." And of course, luckily I had a checkbook in the truck, but otherwise we might have been stuck because it just seemed so foreign, so out of the ordinary to only take cash and check. And we realized that, the hard to find guy who's been doing it for years, recommended, but landline telephone in his basement probably should have told us, yeah, he's not going to be taking credit cards and Venmo and stuff like that. He also was saying that, he wanted to get our project done quickly because he was going to be having surgery. And it just struck me, he's obviously been doing this a long time. It probably, just like, a lot of us, started as a side hustle. And now it's what he does as his retirement job. During the process, he had gone upstairs to check on availability and pricing and stuff like that. And we're looking around, and in his shop is this Singer sewing machine. And it looked like it was from the 1930s. It was really old. It was driven by, an old fan belt looking motor. It was for sure an antique, but it was so durable. And it made me think about kind of the consumer and disposable economy that we have, where, there's engineered obsolescence, where things are meant to break down after a few years so that you have to buy a new one. And, whoever bought this Singer sewing machine bought it, and that thing lasted forever, which is great for the consumer and terrible for Singer sewing machines. But it also got us thinking about trades and kind of the barriers to entry and resistance to entry into the trades. And I think there's a certain stigma maybe in the current generation with going into trades, that there's a lot of glamour around Bitcoin and computer engineering, white collar professions, lawyers and doctors, and SaaS, software as a service, where, web services and things like that are very popular, but you're not really creating anything, right? You're selling things, you're sitting at the computer, it's all digital. And it's rare that you see someone coming out of high school or a trade school that is looking to work with their hands for their whole life. My stepdaughter, Abby, had a high school friend, Lorelei, who went to a school that had a pretty extensive offering of shop courses. And she ended up going through each of those to try and find a discipline that she liked. And she graduated high school, and now she's an electrician. And it's such a rare path, but I think it's awesome. And I think about my own son. A few years ago, he came up and I wanted to build the woodshed that we have out front that holds all our firewood. And he and I were doing that together. And I realized that he didn't really have great skills with the hand tools. Even just swinging a hammer was a little hard to watch. And I felt like, okay, I've kind of dropped the ball with showing him how to do these things. And, it was a teaching opportunity for sure to kind of say, okay, rather than just trying to tap, 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 use the physics of the length of the hammer and the, swinging from the elbow. And so it got better, but I realized that it was definitely something that I had missed in his upbringing, was spending time with tools. At the same time, I think back to, probably 2018, 2019, we were building our lake house where the shop is. And then a couple years later, we got the house in Medford, Mass. And both of those houses have fireplaces, but all of the fireplaces are inserts. Even our wood burning fireplace is not it's not real brick, right? It's a box that has brick-like panels, and there's just no real industry around bricklaying. Maybe there is for the facade of a house. It's part of the construction thing. But being a mason to build fireplaces is just prohibitively expensive, and contractors avoid it. And so there's just a real shortage of that kind of skilled labor. My own career, I admit I did 30 years sitting at a computer desk, typing code. But I also had this background with my dad and his tools and doing different projects and having a curiosity about working with my hands, that once I was getting towards retirement age, I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to make things and deliver them to people. And it's very rewarding. And it made me think of kind of the Renaissance man idea, where, a Renaissance man has the education and manners and politeness and charm of a sophisticated person, but also can play music, can build something, can cook something. It's a very well-rounded profile. And I think there's a lot of specialization in areas that are kind of consumer driven rather than creator driven. My dad was always worried about anarchy and societal collapse and conspiracy theories and the collapse of American society. Every civilization goes through cycles, and there's no guarantee that 200 250, 275 years of American history, that's still just a drop in the bucket, and that's no guarantee that it'll last forever. I am not in that camp, but I understand the idea that at some point you could find yourself in a situation where what you've relied on as the norm, whether it's internet and electronic banking and electronic funds transfers and all of that stuff, just goes away. And now you actually have to make your way through the world based on what you know and what you can contribute. And being able to build something and to have a skill that lets you contribute seems very valuable, rather than, society collapses and we've got a whole generation of helpless consumers who are like, oh, why aren't you helping me? When everyone's got to kind of fend for themselves. You've got to be able to find your food and cook your food and provide for yourself and your family, maintain your home, generate your own electricity if you need to, build a fire to stay warm. These are all important skills that I feel like lately there's more than one generation that just doesn't have it. We watch Survivor and we look at how hard it is for some people to make a fire. And I'm like, that's caveman days. This should be basic skills that people are learning. I'm lucky to have Brody, who's a high school guy that's helping me out probably 6 to 10 hours a week. And he had some shop classes, but he gets into the shop and he's learning stuff every week. And I guess that's where I want to take this message, is to challenge people who have these skills to share them with the younger generation and bring people up and encourage them to learn to work with their hands. And even if they decide to go into a cushy office job, have some skills to be able to provide for yourself outside of the office and the computer. I think it's invaluable. And if we want society to grow, it would be great if we had more people who are knowledgeable and enthusiastic about the trades. So that's my message. Share what you know. Get dusty with a kid. And that's all I have for you this week. But stay safe in your shop, and I'll talk to you again soon.